Hi, my name is Meagan Nelan. I am an analyst here at SWAPA. I've worked very closely with our negotiating committee, not only shaping our various pay proposals, but also doing the costing and analysis to ensure that we are securing improvements in compensation. One of those is leg change override. And I'd like to take this opportunity to walk through a few examples and show how it applies to your pairing pay. Well, first, we need to just start with what is leg change override or LCO. This is going to replace today's daily reassignment pay, which, as a reminder, that is move up for an early report or premium for a later release. Leg change override instead is going to look at your original pairing, and any legs that are not in the original pairing will qualify for leg change override. If it's within the pairing, so the pairing footprint being the report on the first duty period to release on the last duty period, you will be paid a 50% override for any leg that was not originally in your schedule. 100% override will be for any legs that are outside of that footprint, so either a departure earlier than your original or a block-in later than your original last day block-in. You can also trigger 100% override within the footprint, and this would be other than for a turn, so 2-day through a 4-day pairing, other than the last day, a duty period where you have a release that is greater than 3 hours from your original release would trigger the 100% override. So that's LCO. The other concept is the pay multiple, which is new. This is going to be a definition for premium double time and triple time. The pay multiple being either how it works today, which is the sum of the leg pay time and a half, the sum of the leg pay. It could also be the pay multiple times the DPM, the duty period minimum of 5. So premium today, a pay multiple of a time and a half would be either the leg pay, it would be 7.5, which is time and a half, the DPM, or if it was paying duty hour ratio, it would be time and a half, whatever that DHR value was. Same goes for double time, which in today's world, that would just be for a JA event. But there is going to be voluntary double time in the next contract. And then there are provisions that would allow the company to offer triple time. So again, it would be whatever that pay multiple is by that time and a half, that double or that triple time. The final note, this isn't necessarily pay multiple, but it is related to open time, is that all open time will be offered at full rigs, meaning that nothing will ever pay less than your average daily guarantee of 6.5. Okay, so those are the core concepts. We have several examples that touch one or all of these various components to these pay changes. So we'll start with some of the basic and try to work into the more complex examples of how all of this works together. So starting with just LCO, this is a very simple example. So what we have here is what the original pairing looked like, as well as what the final pairing looked like. So the key here is to really focus on how daily reassignment pay works today versus how the pay multiple and the LCO all work together for the contract 2020 pay. In this case, this was just a straight, it was international turn. It got reassigned into less block, less duty. So in this case, what was actually flown accumulates to less trip for pay than what the original pay was. So the pay protection still comes into play. But in today's world, because there was no move up and there was no later block in, there is no DRP, no daily reassignment pay. Whereas in our contract 2020 pay, you're going to receive 50% LCO for both legs within this turn because they were not in the original. So what you see is the original pay protection of the 7.2 trip for pay, again, from the original turn, plus 50% LCO override for both legs, which comes out to 2.05 trip for pay. So you add those together, and that comes out to 9.25 trip for pay. So this would pay more under the new online reassignment pay rules that include the leg change override versus today's daily reassignment pay. Next example, this would be a leg change override on an open time award, which brings in the full rigs component. So this is actually very simple. This was a 2-leg turn awarded in daily open time. The change is that the pilot went from deadheading on flight 1740 from LaGuardia to Atlanta to now operating that flight. This would trigger a leg change. And the other piece to keep in mind here is that he was originally scheduled to block in at 1620 back in domicile. He actually blocked in at 1628, which is outside of that pairing footprint. So the turn is going to pay full rig of 6.5 because this was an open time award. Then the 100% LCO will kick in for the leg change outside of the footprint. So you'll have your 6.5, and then you're going to add 2.9, 100% LCO. That comes out to 9.4. So to reiterate, in today's world, this doesn't pay anything extra for the leg change because a deadhead promote, that there is no provision for additional pay for a deadhead promote in today's world. And additionally, open time does not pay full rigs in today's world. So in this case, it was paying DHR. So it's getting a pay bump from the full rig as well as the pay bump from the LCO. Okay, now we're going to take in the pay multiple in addition to the LCO. Here we have a 2-day premium open time award with no changes to day 1. Day 2, in today's world, we would call this a move up. It's an earlier report. This is all new legs, so he didn't complete any of his original day 2. 2 things happening here. One is the pay multiple. So in today's world, this pays leg pay times time and a half on day 1. In the contract 2020 world, this is actually going to pay time and a half the DHR, which the DHR value for day 1 is 8.14. So we're going to multiply that by time and a half, which is where we come to 12.21 for day 1. No LCO on that day because there were no changes. Day 2, however, 3 new legs. They're all within the original footprint. He was originally supposed to be released at 15:45. His new release time is 15:19. So nothing was outside of the footprint, but all 3 legs will trigger 50% LCO for being leg changes. Then additionally, the rate of pay being a premium award is going to be time and a half the legs in this case. So one thing I want to point out with this example is that every time there's a leg change on a premium trip, it's going to end up paying more than it pays today. In today's world, those reassignment premiums get absorbed essentially by the fact of it being a premium award. Premium doesn't stack on premium in today's world, but in the contract 2020 world, your premium awards will accumulate reassignment pay in this form of LCO. To summarize, day 1 pays 12.21, which is time and a half the DHR. Day 2 pays 10.8, which is the premium of the legs, as well as 3.6 in LCO pay, which comes out to 26.61. SWAPA has been receiving a lot of questions about how our LCO proposal interplays with today's world where there is move-up premium. So if you have an earlier report, you trigger premium for the entire day. We have been transparent that there are going to be scenarios where the total pay actually comes out to less than it does in today's world because LCO doesn't have a move-up component to it. It simply changes to the legs. That said, we've looked at the data and we're estimating roughly about 5% of all reassignments would end up paying less than they do today. It is still ultimately going to benefit our pilots in terms of receiving additional pay for reassignments. But we did want to go through an example where the pay does come out to less. So here we have a 4-day. Day 3 had a leg change, which resulted in a change to day 2. That was an earlier report, and it did return the pilot to his original assignment on the last day. Day 1 and 2 had no changes. Day 3, after his second leg in Pittsburgh, he was reassigned. Instead of doing 2 legs, he went to Houston instead. That's going to be a 50% LCO override, again, within the footprint. It's not later than 3 hours from his original block-in. Day 4, earlier report, deadheading from Houston to Baltimore, which then got him back onto his original assignment. This is the scenario we have been getting questions on, is when a pilot gets returned to their assignment. that's when that move up could potentially not be as lucrative as it is today. But again, we want to take a look at the totality of all the changes and what their pay entails. So day 1, no changes. Day 2, no changes. So the pay is what it is. Day 3, he is going to end up being pay protected for the original, because if you keep in mind that he got routed into less block, less duty, so the leg pay ended up being less than his original. So he gets pay protected for his original 8.6. Then he gets a 50% LCO override for the Pittsburgh to Houston flight. So that comes out to 1.8. Then when we go to day 4, the Houston to Baltimore deadhead was not in his original, so he will get leg LCO for Houston to Baltimore. And then Baltimore to Houston will no longer pay the premium because that's not a leg change. That was in his original assignment. So you have to back out the premium on day 4 to then reassess what his pay is. That would come out to 7.3. And then the LCO for the deadhead will go on top of that of 1.75. So all of it added together comes out to 32.66. I will say that in today's world, because he got premium for that Baltimore to Houston leg, it paid a little bit more. It did pay 32.76. I do want to point out, though, that on day 3, in today's world, there wouldn't have been any additional pay. He ended up just being pay protected for his original because there was no pay triggers under daily reassignment pay that would have accrued him more value for that day from that Pittsburgh to Houston flight. In the LCO world, he gets 50% override for that. So that does absorb some of the pay loss that you see on day 4. So it was a 0.1 trip for pay change here. And this is a common thread that you see on these various move up scenarios where it pays less. It ends up paying less, but not by very much. All right, our next example is an unscheduled overnight that resulted in additional LCO as well as double time pay multiple. So we're going to walk through that. We had an original 3-day, and he actually completed the entire 3-day without any changes. But when he got back into Baltimore on his last day, he got tagged for an add-on, pretty common scenario here, where he flew 1, had an unscheduled overnight, and then returned back to domicile the following day. So what we have here is day 1, no changes. Day 2, no changes, so those pay as is. Day 3, the added leg when he got back to domicile is going to be outside of his footprint of his original release. So he will receive 100% LCO for that leg, which in today's world just pays premium as a later block-in. And then the unscheduled overnight in today's world pays ADG a good majority of the time. In our contract 2020 world, this is going to pay double the DPM in this case, so 5 times 2. So the totality of it, day 3, you have to back out the premium again, so it's going to just pay the legs of 8.46, but then he's going to get 1.6 LCO 100% outside the footprint. Then he's going to get the 10 for the unscheduled overnight. That comes out to 32.46. So this does garnish additional pay versus today's world of 28.16. I'll add one more note on the unscheduled overnight. A newly added duty period at the time it's assigned, that's going to be considered the original for then assessing LCO after the fact. So if he had been reassigned out of Myrtle Beach or getting back to Baltimore on day 4, then LCO would have started to trigger for that day for additional leg changes. All right, our next example doesn't actually have any LCO, but I did think it was important to highlight how the double time pay multiple will impact JAs. So here we have just a 2-day JA. There were never any reassignments, but the calculations for each duty period do change based on the pay multiple agreement. So day 1, low blocking day. In today's world, this would just pay 5, which is the DPM. But due to the pay multiple agreement, that's actually going to be 5 multiplied by 2, DPM by 2. So that'll be 10. And then day 2 in today's world, that would actually pay double the legs. The legs came out to 5.2 multiplied by 2. In the contract 2020 world, this is actually going to take the DHR value that you see on the screen, the 5.86, and it's going to multiply that by 2, which comes out to 11.72. So 10 plus 11.72, that's going to come out to 21.72. So a significant pay bump compared to the 15.4 that the JA pays today. And if there had been any leg changes, then those would have paid in addition to that value, which we're going to go through now. This will be a JA plus LCO. Pretty simple, pretty common, low blocking, low duty period. 2-leg JA turn pays 6.5 in today's world. The reassignment, which was going from deadheading to operating a different flight, wasn't outside the footprint. This was an earlier block in. But in today's world, that doesn't pay anything additional. Again, keep in mind that in today's world, premium and JA assignments, when they have changes, there isn't any daily reassignment pay because they're already paying a time and a half or a double time value. In the Contract 2020 world, that leg change is going to garnish a 50% LCO within the footprint. So he's going to get 10, which is the DPM times 2, which is just the rate of pay for the pay multiple of the double time JA assignment. Then he's going to get 0.7 LCO on top of that. So that'll come out to 10.7. So far, we've had some pretty simple scenarios. I wanted to talk through some more complex scenarios now. The 100% inside the footprint, which, as a reminder, that would be a duty period that's not the last day, locking in more than 3 hours from the original, which triggers 100% LCO. So here we have a 2-day with changes on day 1 as well as day 2. So I'm going to just go leg by leg. Day 1, he flew his original 2 legs, but then he got tagged on 4 additional legs. The first leg that he got tagged on, San Jose to Portland, that was less than 3 hours from his original block in of 11:10 Central. So that leg is going to be a 50% LCO pay. From that point on, he went from Portland to Oakland, Oakland to Burbank, Burbank to San Jose. All 3 of those legs blocked in more than 3 hours from his original. So all 3 of those legs will pay 100% LCO. That's day 1. Day 2, he actually got back onto his original assignment, except he was deadhead promoted on his last leg. Note that his original block in on day 2 was 16:10 Central. He ended up underflying. He got in at 15:57. So the deadhead promote was within the pairing footprint. So that'll be a 50% LCO on that last leg. So bringing it all together, day 1, you're going to end up backing out the premiums that you currently see on the assignment. It'll pay the 5 that originally paid. So keep in mind that that day paid 5 DPM before the legs got added on. So he's pay protected for the original pay. Then he also gets the legs added on, which comes out to 11.6. Then you're going to take 1 trip for pay for San Jose to Portland, which is the 50% LCO. And then you're going to take 100% LCO for the remaining 3 legs. That comes out to 4.6 between those 3 legs. So added together, 5.6 total in LCO for day 1. Now day 2, he's going to be paid DHR for the day, 6.41. But now he's also going to get a 50% LCO for that deadhead promote. So adding that all together, you're going to come out to 24.41. So again, there's a lot to consider here within the footprint greater than 3 hours. And our last example, it's a little bit more complicated because this is a premium open time award. So again, to reiterate, changes today on premium awards don't have any sort of daily reassignment pay component because they're already paying premium. Starting from top to bottom, premium award, day 1, no changes. Day 2, he completes the day. Then he has 2 legs added. The first leg, which is going to be Long Beach to Las Vegas, that is within 3 hours of the original block in of 22:10 Central. So that'll be a 50% LCO override. He was then deadheaded Vegas to Sacramento, which was outside the 3 hours of his original footprint of day 2. So that'll be 100% LCO. Then going to day 3, you could call that a move up, but again, on a premium award, there's no move up premium pay. But both of those legs are leg changes. They weren't in his original. The first leg is within the footprint. His original release on that last day was 1:10 Central. So he'll get a 50% override for Sacramento to Seattle. Then the deadhead from Seattle to Denver was actually outside the footprint by 2 minutes. That's going to trigger 100% LCO override for that last leg. So bringing it all together, day 1 is going to pay 13.5, which is the premium leg pay. Day 2 is going to pay 13.05, which is the premium leg pay. But then you're going to add 0.6 for the 50% LCO for, again, Long Beach to Vegas, and then 1.82, 100% LCO for Vegas to Sacramento. Day 3, this is where, again, the pay multiple comes into play. This day pays 5.39 DHR times 1.5, which comes out to 8.08 DHR. Then he's going to get 1.05, 50% LCO for the first leg, Sacramento to Seattle, 100% LCO for that last leg, Seattle to Denver. So altogether, that comes out to 41.16. So again, this was meant to capture, not only the pay multiple, but it captures the 50% LCO. It captures the 100% LCO within the footprint, as well as the 100% LCO outside the footprint. So it all stacks together, and it's important to just, again, day by day assess this. Okay, so just to wrap it up, just as a reminder, leg change override, LCO, has 2 different pay triggers, the 50% within the pairing footprint, 100% outside, with the carve out of within the footprint if a duty period release is greater than 3 hours. This is going to replace daily reassignment pay, which in today's world is move ups for earlier reports and then premium for later releases. In a totality, we do recognize that there are going to be some scenarios that don't pay more due to the change to the move up premiums. That said, SWAP is assessed a vast majority, upwards of 95% of reassignments will pay more.